Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel, and your other host this week is Nick. Welcome back, Nick.
Thanks, Daniel. What's up, Roquette Core?
If this is your very first episode of the show, the way we format it is we go through this week's news, and then we end it with the Broquette block, which is the more personal side of the show, what Nick and I have been up to since you last heard us. So let's jump right in and explore sector number 564. So this one is breaking as of this week. The European Commission has approved Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, which is now moving the deal closer to completion. So Microsoft did address the concerns about cloud gaming and how the approval differs from the UK's previous block. The acquisition is expected to improve cloud gaming and won't harm competition in the console market. Challenges remained with an appeal and scrutiny from the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, which is what Bobby, one of the other hosts on here, was saying on Discord, that it won't go past the U.S., which is, he believes the deal is dead in the water. But this is a pretty big move that the European Commission did approve this deal, and they in fact did say that they're going to, as Maceo was saying, lean pretty hard on the U.S. to get this deal through.
So kind of catch me up really quick, just in case. No, I'm not the only one who's a little bit behind. What is the cloud gaming?
So that's basically where you can stream the game. It's kind of like Netflix or any other streaming thing. So without actually downloading the game to your console and taking up all that space, you can just stream it, which is a pretty big thing with Game Pass. Sony was whining and complaining that Microsoft had a monopoly on cloud gaming because of Game Pass and how successful that is, which is basically you pay almost $20 a month, a little less than that, and you can stream a bunch of Xbox games without having to buy them. And so what Microsoft did is they made a cloud streaming deal with a bunch of different companies, and that helped alleviate that concern that by getting Activision Blizzard, they would have this monopoly on the cloud gaming.
Gotcha. Well, that seems to make a lot of sense that they'd just be able to download them by that. That would make sense for me because I don't know. That's kind of why I got out of the whole gaming thing. I couldn't keep up with what was coming out or anything like that to seem to have an unlimited amount of titles, or probably not unlimited. I'm sure there is a limit, but to have a good amount of titles on there to be like, I want to play this today seems smart. And then what? So Sony, why don't they just do the same thing then?
Sony, as far as buying up or doing their own cloud gaming?
Doing their own cloud gaming.
How can they they're trying, but they're not good at it. They have PlayStation Plus and they have some games on there, but they're just not as good at it. Their infrastructure isn't as well put together, and instead they invested in PlayStation VR 2, which is really expensive, and it's flopping for them, and they're losing money on it. So they're just kind of placing the wrong bets here.
Very interesting. All right. Well, I mean, somebody's always got to be ahead and on the ball, and then meanwhile, there's always somebody kind of trying to not play catch up and maybe do their own thing when maybe they should be playing catch up, but I guess time will tell for that one.
It will pay off pretty big for Microsoft, I think, which they've admitted they're behind on the gaming market. PlayStation, Sony themselves, during the last earnings call, they were touting how they have 75% of the gaming market. And at the same time, this is what Maceo and I kept laughing about, is that they were saying that it's a monopoly and how this is unfair. But on that same earnings call, they were celebrating the fact that they own 75% of the console market. So it's like, you can't have it both ways, Sony. The deal is going to go through, and Microsoft, in probably less than 10 years, is going to reap the benefits from this deal.
That's awesome. I'm excited to see where it goes.
We're also going to get more from the Fast and Furious franchise. I can't wait to get... I was actually about to buy my tickets today. The latest Fast and Furious movie, Fast 10, might actually be the start of a trilogy, according to hints from Vin Diesel. So the studio initially planned a 2-part finale ending in Fast 11, but now it's considering turning it into a 3-part series. No official confirmation has been given yet. The franchise would extend to 12 movies if this trilogy plan materializes. The 11th movie, directed by Louis Leterrier, will follow the trilogy, and by the time this episode releases, Fast 10 is in theaters now. So good news for me, because I love all these Fast movies, and if they were to say, this is the start of another trilogy, and then we're going to do even more. Just have at it. Keep pumping them out. If they keep making money, I'm going to keep watching them, man.
And that's kind of their expectation too. They're just going to keep making them, and they're going to keep making money. I love it. You know, a little bit ago, I would say probably with Deathly Hallows, the Harry Potter final film, in which broke into two movies, restarted the trend, in which was followed by a lot of other book to movies like The Mockingjay and The Twilight did it too. So to have a finale be in two parts, not unheard of, especially this day and age. If there was a fucking franchise though who said, I'm going to take my finale into three parts, it makes a lot of sense that it's the Fast and Furious franchise. So it's not my cup of tea. I don't even really truly remember the last one I saw, but I'm happy that they're still making them because, like you said, there's people like you who are just like, keep doing it. And again, at this point, like they're known for being ridiculous and jumping the shark multiple times. So like I said, like I like it. I like that they're like, no, we have so much story to tell. We're going to do the only finale in three parts. Because I can't name another movie that's done a finale in three parts.
I hope they even go the Kingdom of Hearts route where they're like, you know what? Fast and Furious 10.5, Fast and Furious 10.8. Just keep releasing them in between and just break them all up, make all your money. Final Fantasy did it too. And I wouldn't complain, honestly. And if someone was saying, like, you know, a lot of people are tired of superhero films, so they'll go watch these other action films, and it'll fill in the gaps in between there. And I think with Fast and Furious, it's dead if Vin Diesel's gone, I think. I don't think anyone else could carry that franchise. And I know they've talked about doing an all-female spin-off with the Fast and Furious characters, which might do well. They have some good characters in there. But without Vin, I think you don't really have a franchise anymore.
Agreed. I think maybe one, because when I think about it, like if it was a Michelle Rodriguez led thing, even I would probably be like, all right, I'll watch that. Because I believe anything she does. I think she's wonderful. 10.8, yeah. I mean, they can cube it after a while, you know, 10 to the third. And just like, it'd be cool if they just introduce characters or like maybe not introduce, but introduce the concept of like, all right, you two are going to go over here. And didn't check in on them at all until like 2 or 3 movies later. And it's like, hey, you thought we forgot where these two went? Well, this is their story now. And like you said, just keep on adding spokes to that wheel.
The last thing I'll say about it is I still love that they keep getting this massive talent to these. And I know people turn their nose up at the Fast and Furious movies, but now they had even Charlize Theron, who's on her like third or fourth one of these, as the main villain behind the scenes and everything. So an Oscar-winning actor on here, they have the money to spend, and they're not too good for these films. I love that Charlize is like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do Mad Max. Like, she'll go up and down and give a hell of a performance. She actually gives a shit when she does these movies.
And she also seems, I love that you bring her up. She also will then go and play with like a Seth MacFarlane and do Million Ways to Die in the West, or maybe do like, you know, who did, I think it was Pete Boyle who did Hancock, and that was a weird, fun movie. She seems cool.
Yeah.
Oh, and then the other one, I just saw it too on the HBO. She did a movie with Seth Rogen where she's a political candidate, and shit, what the hell is the name of that? It doesn't matter. Again, she decided, so funny that you brought her up. I was just talking about her the other day of like, who'd you want to hang out with? I'm like, I think Charlize Theron would be a good time. Also, Jason Momoa's in this one too. So
yeah, another expensive get right there. Jason Momoa, who's playing a villain.
One. Yeah, I'd watch him. I'd watch him do anything. He hasn't disappointed yet.
Well, this episode may be flagged as all Disney. You might think we're a Disney podcast. And as always, it's good news when we have Disney on here. So let's start off with this first one, as Disney has announced a price increase for the ad-supported tier of Disney Plus during the latest earnings call. So the ad-supported tier, known as Disney Plus Basic, was launched last December at $7.99 a month. The exact amount of the price increase has not yet been disclosed, and it's uncertain if it will affect the pricing of the ad-free service. I think it definitely will. This decision comes alongside the plan to incorporate Hulu programming into Disney Plus by the end of the year. So just half a year ago, they were talking about how during the old, I forgot who took over, Bob Iger fired the guy, Chapek. Chapek was talking about how he had no interest in Hulu. They didn't want to buy it. They were actually looking to sell off their share of it. And now with Bob Iger coming back, he actually wants to absorb all of Hulu, pump it into Disney Plus. It's kind of doing what Discovery's doing. Put Discovery into Max and bring up the price. And this is what Disney's trying to do with Disney Plus now.
Which makes sense in my opinion. It's smart. I don't find myself going to Disney Plus nearly ever.
Mm-mm.
Not one that I personally pay for. I will say that I am just scamming that off of some family members. So already, if it were to disappear, I really don't know what I'd miss at this point. Every now and then, it is good to go on there and maybe like turn on what we would consider the classics, the Renaissance era kind of Disney, and be like, I haven't heard this song in a while, but honestly, that's what YouTube's for.
Mm-hmm.
So I really don't know at this point what I'd miss. Whereas, I am paying myself for Hulu, and I don't want to watch the commercials either, is where I'm at there. So like in this whole thing, it kind of makes me think that I'd really like to see them not really worry about a chain or like a channel to go down. Like, oh, we're just Disney. Look at all this Disney stuff, Disney. Where it's like, hey, everybody knows that we're Disney and we're like a multi-billion-dollar company that's about entertainment on every single. If we can make money, they want to make money on it. So therefore, we have a fuck ton of content. Like, I understand wanting maybe a kid section, but I hope that this just brings one price for me personally to pay, no ads, and I get both on one thing. So this way, if I am skipping around looking for my Family Guys or my American Dads or Always Sunnies or something like that, that I go specifically to for FX, Sons of Anarchy. And meanwhile, you're like, oh, okay, there's Moana too. Let's watch You're Welcome. I would enjoy one big kind of platform for them.
I know you're a little more into MCU and Star Wars than I am. Is there any of that you still keep up with Disney Plus whenever they bring out a new Marvel show or a new Star Wars show?
Marvel for a little bit. I really liked WandaVision. I thought that was a good time, and that was like the last time I remember having an all-around good time. I thought that started, followed, and ended beautifully, and everything since then either got one of those wrong. Loki started and followed really good, didn't love the ending. I don't know how much more deep into the MCU and the new Ant-Man Quantumanium I have to get into to fully appreciate it, or if we're all going to go for Loki too. But I felt at the end of that show, character-wise, we ended up in the same exact place. Maybe Loki wasn't as big of a dick, but whatever. That's small. He had to restart all the other relationships he's forged. Blah, blah. She-Hulk didn't get far on. I mean, in terms of Star Wars, really like Star Wars. But I'm finding out maybe I don't. I don't know. A lot of true Star Wars people wouldn't say I like Star Wars. I'm really about the original trilogy. I grew up during the time where the prequels were big, and I still have a lot of love for those movies. And then the new three, very, very mixed feelings about that. I liked 6, 7, don't really like. Or no, not 6. 7, really like. 8, not so much. And 9 was fine. It's okay. Rogue One, a Star Wars story, that one fucking kicked ass. I'm a weird kind of, I like Solo. But in terms of the original stuff, can't get on board The Mandalorian. I think it's a boring show, unfortunately. Like, it's got the same setup every single episode where, like, spoilers to anybody and yourself too, if you haven't watched it, like the Mandalorian shows up and he's like, I need to do this. And like people are like, I'm not going to do that for you until you do this for me. And he's like, I don't want to. And they're like, well, tough shit. And he's like, all right, fine, I'll help you. And then he does. And they're like, all right, well, here's my help. And it's on this next planet. And he goes, oh, okay. Shows up to the next planet. Rinse and repeat. It's insane to me how that keeps kind of going. So needless to say, not a fan there. No, like I said, I really cannot find something that's dragging me to Disney Plus.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people feel that same way. I've heard some very negative things about the new season of The Mandalorian. Like even people that were into Star Wars and into The Mandalorian were like, yeah, this is now turning into the rest of Disney Star Wars. Like this was the one interesting thing that we all had, and now they're focusing on like weird side characters, I hear, and they made the Mandalorian, like they took away the cool factor for him, and they really changed the character up. And I don't know if that's because I hear rumors that Pedro Pascal is looking to get out of the show, so they're writing him out by the end of season 2. But all of those things factor into the fact that people aren't as crazy about these originals, and we will cover what Disney's doing about that because it is affecting their bottom line. So just continuing on this Hulu deal, Bob Iger did consider the idea of acquiring Comcast's stake in Hulu, and he mentioned it during the recent earnings call. He called it cordial when they were talking about having discussions in incorporating Hulu into Disney. So we'll probably find out more about that as the year comes through, probably by the next quarterly earnings. But the subscriber losses, Disney Plus did suffer significant ones this year, primarily in Disney Plus Hotstar in India due to the loss of cricket streaming rights. So while experiencing modest gains in other regions, the platform lost 4 million global subscribers this last quarter in 2023. So CEO Bob Iger remains optimistic. He cited strategic changes, basically trying to calm his investors down. Higher subscription revenue and reduced marketing costs contributed to improved financial performance, but potential further losses loom as Disney plans to remove certain titles from its streaming services. So this does mark the largest loss they've had since they launched the service, and they're kind of panicking about it.
I think that says a lot right now in the terms of exactly what I was just kind of saying. Like, as somebody who loves Marvel, who loves Star Wars, who loves Disney, who loves Pixar, why am I not like literally on this app every single day? It's weird. I don't know if there's just too much of it that maybe it's overwhelming and I wouldn't know where to start, or I'm not sure. But I guess that with all the losses, that's why we can expect a pay increase. I know for the longest time that they were saying that the parks were the ones really covering all of the expenses of making these shows and whatnot. So to see a little bit of a trickle doesn't really surprise me either. Like I said, like if I'm personally, it's crazy for me to think, to be honest, Daniel, like that I'm me, the guy who like can't get enough of this is like, I'll just watch the episodes of She-Hulk with Daredevil in it, because I'm at that point. Like we might have finally done it. We might have hit saturation, and people are just really picking and choosing where they want to go, what they want to pay into, and it's crazy to think that that answer isn't Disney right now.
I'm glad you brought that up because I see that pretty often, and I even brought it up earlier that people are saying, I forget which director or filmmaker was called it like a couple years ago, that we're going to get the oversaturation of superhero or comic book media. And how do you feel about the argument of some people are saying it's just too much too often, so people are losing interest, and others are saying that the content's actually getting worse, and that if as long as the content's good, that people will come out for it. So kind of like, for example, I haven't seen the movie, but people went out and saw No Way Home. I think was the third one for Spider-Man, and the Morbius movie ended up doing pretty well. So there's a couple things in there that people are willing to come out for. Spider-Verse is about to release. But I don't know. Where do you fall in that argument of maybe we're getting too much, or all the content's kind of, we're getting too much bad content? What do you think is contributing to people losing interest?
A little bit of everything, unfortunately. You know, I know that's such a bland answer, but when I think about how much is out there, it is a lot. Is it getting better? Not really. You know, everybody keeps coming to me because, you know, at work I am kind of the comic guy, and did you go see what's the latest Marvel one now? Son of a bitch.
I think it was Quantumania, wasn't it?
No, I think there's one more. Didn't something else come out in between, or isn't there something out?
Oh, Guardians 3. That's right.
Thank you. Yes, sir. So Guardians, like, did you go see Guardians? You're going to see Guardians. I was like, I don't know. Didn't really like the second one almost at all. And this one I hear about, and big spoilers to anybody who's listening. I don't know any plot points. I just know what has been put into what they're called headlines. So I don't think it's a huge spoiler, but this one gets very much into the topic of animal abuse and stuff like that. And that's already one where I'm like, I don't need to interject my day with that. You know, I have things in my own personal psyche that I have to, like, you know, there's enough darkness where I don't need to subject myself to more. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
Even if it's for a good story, like, I don't really need to know. I'm assuming it's Rocket Raccoon. You know, he's got that line in that first one. It's really emotional. It's actually pretty, like, I'm assuming that's what it is, where he goes, you know, I didn't ask to be made. I didn't ask to be made or torn apart 1,000 times and put back together. So I'm thinking it's more of that. And like, I don't need to see that. But people are going, and they didn't really go to Ant-Man as far as I know. And they are going to this and really saying, oh, this is the best one since Endgame. And that's really, in my opinion, Endgame was good. I very much enjoyed Endgame. You know, those little moments that they gave us that we did kind of build to, it worked for me. And nothing really has, like, even the No Way Home, like, yeah, I guess it was cool seeing Toby and Andrew, and that's fine. And we got a multiverse and stuff. But again, even now, I'm not some, like, I'd rather watch the episode of the animated series when they get their Spider-Verse together. I think that's cool. Like that, I go back. Maybe that is the pure nostalgia button that I don't know. I think the real test, honestly, is going to be The Flash next month. I don't know why, but I had the feeling like that movie's probably going to make a fuck ton of money. And then we'll see what that does for their universe and what they plan to do, and who knows. And then I think the next to fall will unfortunately be Blue Beetle. I just feel like that, like nobody's ready for that movie. And, they'll say, we did a DC movie and it was really good. Why wasn't it as good as that one? And it'll be a whole different, shit, man. I feel like I'm rambling after your answer. Yes, there's too much. No, I don't think everything's getting worse, though a lot of it isn't up to par.
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer, let's get 2 really good movies a year, guys. Hit me in December and on June and like really work that shit out and stop terrorizing CGI people so they can just like have normal hours and normal jobs and get paid right. And I don't know. I feel like we are creating a bit of a problem with wanting everything now immediately and build and more and more. And maybe if we pump the brakes and got a few things a year, it's like Christmas. I can wrap 37 small things. You can have like 2 really huge ones. What would you prefer?
Yeah, I think that's the route they should go with. It reminds me of the old like Fox X-Men days where you'd get like Daredevil you were saying like during the spring or summer, and then you'd get an X-Men movie during the winter, and those were the things you'd look forward to. Just a couple of superhero films a year. And yeah, now you're getting it on the big screen, you're getting it on the little screen on streaming. And I can only speak from my experience. I do think that I don't know if they're getting worse. The DC films are, from obviously we've seen that over the last couple of years. They're just getting worse and worse. But the MCU movies, once Disney took over, they've had that same quality that I'm not a fan of. So those haven't changed to me. Like the CGI has probably gotten worse. I don't know. Like it looks really bad now, but it's always kind of just been not great. So that isn't affecting me at all because I'm not watching any of it. They're just making more of it. But now the DC movies, the ones that I would have been interested in, I'm like, okay, now those look like Marvel movies. You see the Flash trailer and it's got some really terrible CGI in it. They don't know how to light the Batman costume with Michael Keaton. He's all lit up terribly. It's a costume that's meant to be that's why they designed it that way, to be in the dark, to be against true black backgrounds, and they're lighting him up, and that's why he looks goofy. So it's just a studio that really doesn't know what they're doing. They don't have a direction. And I don't think that's going to get any better with James Gunn because he does come from that world of Marvel. So he's going to give them more of that, which is more of what I'm not interested in. And I don't know if it just aligns with the general audience or not, because I mean, you look at the James Gunn and Zaslav and Hamada stuff, the general audience was coming out for films like Man of Steel, BVS, and all of those, Wonder Woman, Suicide Squad. And since then, there's been a significant drop. So whatever it is that even you, I, or the next Marvel fan look at, none of that is significant because the general audience happens to also not watch the stuff that I don't want to watch either. It's just kind of weird how it works out that way. And I couldn't tell you what it is about the general audience that's not making them come out and see these films. It just doesn't have that cool factor, or it's just not sexy or any of that. It really isn't. And that's what we're getting, and that's what little money they're going to make. People are going to vote with their dollar, and when they see that these things don't make money, then I think we will get to that point where you were saying, pump the brakes. Let's not make as many of these movies because people are not paying to see these movies. And then once we get less of those, either there'll be a spike again when we get those superhero films like, oh, I've been waiting for this next one, or the genre will move on and people will go to sci-fi or whatever it is, whatever the next big thing is, people will flock to that.
Yeah, I agree. Because if we look at the entire thing like a cycle, we might be in the Superman 3 era of stuff, where at once we were in the Superman era, the original, and like, yeah, everything's good, and the Batman 89, and now we're in that era where it's kind of becoming hokey and silly. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, and I don't I'm aware that I'm quite arrogant. Maybe it's I don't know. I just want something to also think about when I watch these movies a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like I was just watching a little bit before I started Air, the Ben Affleck directed movie, and it's good, and it's just fucking people talking. Nothing has been done. It's this quote unquote sports movie. Not one lick of basketball has actually been played. Like it's just people talking, and that's the shit I'm into all of a sudden, and like really hardcore now that I think that we're talking about. That it's missing. Like you've always said it, quite honestly, like it's becoming very fast food. There's no actual substance to anything. There's no weight or gravitas. It's just kind of over and done with. And, I'm not saying I want a Batman movie or a Flash movie or an Iron Man movie or a Hulk movie. I'm not saying I want this character to just sit and talk the whole time, but just make it worth something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Give it some staying power. Don't make a film that's just going to be there to sell the trailer.
Yeah, like we were talking about, like the quote unquote good old days, like X-Men 2, great movie. It just makes sense. Even if, you took away superpowers and you just kind of put everybody in their like elite fighting ninjas or some shit like that, gave them all real world applicable skills. The plot still makes sense.
Yep.
Yes, if it wasn't Nightcrawler bouncing and poofing around, if you will, and he was just bouncing off walls and being really acrobatic and shit like that, that scene still works because the direction works, the story works, and all that. Whereas some of the ones that you get now, you're like, it just doesn't. I don't want to shit on Wakanda forever, but that was the last one where I was expecting the former. I was expecting something deep and good and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know. The story really doesn't work without the superpowers in a sense and stuff like that. Like it didn't flow the way I thought it was going to, especially as a sequel to that first one, which had what I'm talking about. If you take away Black Panther from Black Panther, the first one, and you just make him a king or a leader of a tribe, no Black Pantherness, movie still works. You know what I'm trying to say? And that's more of what I'm trying to see anymore. That's again, back to what I was about to say too, with the sexy and cool, like you were talking about. Just saw the trailer for Oppenheimer.
Oh yeah.
Oh, does that look sexy
so
and cool? I want to see that. I want to get back to the point where like this feels like a phenomena. Going into the movie, I feel like I'm about to see something that's gonna be special and is going to last. And that's, to keep sucking Chris Nolan's dick. Like that's how I felt going in to The Dark Knight. Like,
yep.
Shit, this is gonna be good. And then you get that first opening shot of Chicago, but it's really Gotham, right? And the window pops out and that high string quartet is playing, building it, and like you knew watching that movie when it opened, like, holy shit, I'm in something. Like something's gonna happen really quick. And you don't really get that. Again, the last one that I really remember feeling that for is for Endgame, at least on the Marvel side, because I thought Snyder had a lot of those in that cut. But was like that Avengers Assemble moment, I think that is really good. And that meant something. And I think that could still bring people chills, and that delivered something. But even then, compared to The Dark Knight or compared to, Not Impressed or moments like that from Zack Snyder, like it just doesn't happen anymore. I need substance. I need to go home and think about it rather than like, that was bright. That was really bright. They all got their lasers and, that was cool.
Fun.
It was very bright. Exactly. Yeah. Like,
you're right. If they have the foundation and it's excellent, the skeleton is key. You got to have that strong foundation, and then the rest of it is icing on the cake. And you even look at The Flash. I haven't seen the movie. I won't see the film, but I couldn't tell you what that's really about. I mean, I've seen tweets from people that saw the film and they're like, yeah, this is all that happens. And I'm like, okay, the plot doesn't fit that criteria that you were talking about of, if you take away the speed powers or whatever and replace them with something else, it's still an amazing story. And it doesn't have that from everything that I've seen from the person that's like, here's all the plot points that happen in the film. And it's a shame. And that's exactly what's happening with them. And they're not keeping their talent. They got rid of Nolan. And I'm glad you brought up Nolan, because that he went, all right, I'm going to make this next one like really fucking special, as you were saying, like really, really give it 110%, because he wants to prove not only to Universal that he's worth it, but to Warner Brothers of like, you should have fucking paid me. You shouldn't have released my Tenet movie when you did. Things like that. And I think Oppenheimer is going to do extremely well, and it's going to further prove that Nolan's a guy you keep. You got to keep your artists.
I agree that it's gonna do very well. Especially, I do. I feel like for some reason he feels, and again I don't fucking know him, but I feel like he feels that he has something almost to make up for with Tenet, or something to be like, I feel like a lot of the media was like, I don't know, did he drop the ball?
Right?
What the fuck do you think you're talking about? You know what I mean? He's like, get Cillian Murphy on the phone. We're going to make a new movie now. Who else is around? And like, when you look at that stack too, like I was talking about it with my mom and like my wife the other day when we were at the Mother's Day dinner, of just like, that's in my opinion, how cool Chris Nolan must be to work with. And not only like a comfortable way, but again, I think we're doing something kind of way of just like, you look at the names and it's like, oh, Chris, yeah, I want to be a part of that. I'll come out for that. Even just kind of smaller parts where you're just like, wow, I can't believe they came out to say like 10 seconds worth of dialogue. And it's like, well, it's Chris Nolan. Like, it
Yep.
seems like everybody wants to go out and play with him.
Yeah, that'll be out, I think, in the next couple of months, right? We're getting a summer release for Oppenheimer.
I
I
will
think it's July
triple
or something.
check while we're on it. But no, I was just on the YouTube. It was one of those ones where it's like, here's an ad. I was like, all right. Ooh, dude, it's weird. It just says coming soon.
It's got to be this year. It's got to be. But there's a good string of movies, though. Honestly, I was telling Kelly, I'm like, holy shit, we got Fast and Furious, Spider-Verse 2. We got Hypnotic by Ben Affleck is a week out already. That one just released, and Air just came out. We went to go see that, and it's like, oh, this is like the time that Oppenheimer, and this is the time of the year where, like, I think way more than even last year. I'm like, I gotta go see all these. So it is set to release on July 21st.
Yep, got that. Yep. It's so weird though. When you go into the IMDb, it just says soon, but if you hit that, then you can set a reminder for July 21st. Also, really big on their thing. It says 7/21/23. So I should have caught that first.
Big summer hit incoming, that's for sure. So the last bit of Disney news this week is during a recent earnings call. Disney announced its plan to remove certain content from Disney Plus and reduce its future content offerings. So this is a little bit of what you were talking about. Although I don't know if we'll discuss if this is a good or a bad thing for Disney. CFO Christine McCarthy stated that this process would result in an impairment charge of approximately 1.5 to 1.8 billion. So the specific content to be removed was not disclosed, but it is expected to occur gradually over several months. So additionally, Disney intends to produce fewer volumes of content moving forward as part of this shift, and the impact on ongoing projects and disruption caused by the writer's strike right now remains uncertain. So this is sort of exactly like Discovery and Disney are mirroring each other, because Discovery started signing off their projects. So for example, the Caped Crusader, Amazon bought it up, the streaming for that, and they re-upped with a season 2. And they're doing that with a bunch of streaming services. Netflix just got Justice League from the Timverse. So instead of keeping it all on Max, they're selling it, getting some money, and putting it on whatever for a few months. And then from there, they'll either put it back on Max or they'll sell it to whomever is next. And it sounds like Disney is now going that route because honestly, earnings have not been great for them. And it's been a rough year for them as far as their profit margin. And with Disney Plus, it sounds like it's a bit of a sinkhole for them. A lot of these big companies are maybe realizing that these streaming services are not as lucrative as they thought they'd be, and they're kind of hitting the panic button a little bit.
So I had to look it up. I'm a little ignorant on the verbiage. An impairment charge is the process used by businesses to write off worthless goodwill. An impairment cost must be included under expenses when the book value of an asset exceeds the recoverable amount. That's pretty harsh words. So basically what they're saying is like, no, I can't even, like, oh man, really cutting their losses. And yes, very much seem scared about that. That's insane. Yeah.
So that's like the Batgirl project, right? Is that kind of what they're doing now then?
Yeah. That's exactly what I thought of too, Daniel. Absolutely. That's exactly what I thought of. Like, no, I'd rather just completely cut losses, bury it deep, and pray it doesn't come back to me rather than try to make money off of it. That's how bad, or that's how little I want to do with this anymore. Insane. That's insane. I'm happy you brought up the Timverse too on Netflix. Isn't it fun just to watch it on a different platform, or am I just insane?
I'm just like, wherever it is, I'm gonna watch it because I have Netflix, I have Max, I have access to Hulu. So I mean, yeah, wherever it is, I'm gonna be able to watch it. I just have so many of these services, and it doesn't really affect me too much in a negative way. I know a lot of people complain like, oh, it's leaving Max. It's like, yeah, but more people have Netflix. So I mean, who's really affected by that change?
That's a good point. It's a very good point. I just like watching it. I love that show so fucking much.
I tried showing it to Leo. I think he's still a little young, and I get it because my brother was really into it. He's 5 years younger than me, and I was in like 16, 17 when he was really into Justice League, and I couldn't get into it. I would watch it, like him watching it and all that. And I'm like, yeah, it's not really my thing. It wasn't until my early 20s, no, actually when I was like 19 or 20, when I went back and I was revisiting a bunch of my shows from my childhood, right? And they were re-releasing, for example, Batman the Animated Series, and they re-released the Justice League on DVD, and that's where I picked it back up, and It was right after a rewatch of Batman the Animated Series, and I'm like, all right, well, let's continue Batman because it's just Batman and friends. And I'm like, oh, this is fucking good. I don't know why it didn't capture me when, in my mid-teens, but for some reason as an adult, it's just plays better. And it's the same with Leo. He just kind of got bored of it. Like he wasn't really into the alien invasion thing with the Justice League. There wasn't enough Batman in it for him. So I think that was where he just couldn't connect too much with the other Justice League members. And he's like, why isn't it just Batman?
I feel that, yeah. Batman is bitches is basically what it is. That's one of the ones, it's kind of funny as we were talking about all this, I had customers come in, and once again, being the comic book guy, you watching this? And as I just kind of said earlier too, like, no, I'm not watching She-Hulk. And they're like, oh, really? Why not? I don't know. It's just not really capturing. I got the HBO Max, and what I am watching, I'm watching like the Justice League mode. Really? Yeah, it's like they say they made it for kids, but it's probably one of the best representations of what I think of as the DC continuity as a whole.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. When I think about some of the core values that the characters not only look at or like look for and feel, but I feel like it did it very well for its time and for the tone of the show that it is. Because sometimes it does get a little campy, which I'm fine with. It's a cartoon. It's still kind of allowed to be such, like we said, when I think some of the appeal should be aimed at children, like it was quote unquote meant for. I enjoy that one very much, and I think its spiritual predecessor is Young Justice.
Mm-hmm.
Have you not gone into that one still?
I've watched the first couple of seasons, but I have not at all caught up to it because it's not a show. When those were coming out, it was that and Green Lantern the Animated Series, and I was really into Green Lantern the Animated Series, and I wanted a second season of that. And instead, they renewed Young Justice, which is what Kelly was into. So she was happy as can be, but even she hasn't come back and watched season 4 and 5, I think it is, of Young Justice, where they did a time jump, and now they have kids even. Like, it's wildly different than what it started as.
Wildly different. Yeah, the first 2 seasons, the OG seasons, are by far the absolute fucking best. There is no 2, 3, 4 ways to cut it. They are amazing. And again, when it comes to a whole, as I feel about the tone of the DC universe, I'm not sure if much does better than it. Season 3 was really not too great, if you ask me. That was the first one that they kind of got brought back for. If you remember the DC Universe app,
yep,
it was original to that. It was brought back just for that, the same way Titans was created just for that. And that was a good time.
I think, too.
Yeah. Yep. That was on there. Stargirl was on there. That one died horribly, I believe, as well. That was fine. And now this latest one that they did a 4th one that honestly came back pretty good. Not as good as 1 or 2, but much, much better than 3, where there was 1 or 2 things where I just paused and I had to look at my wife and I was like, spoilers, do you care?
No.
I was like, if they're in the fucking Phantom Zone right now, bro, I'm going to lose my mind after like weeks of like, where is this? What's going on? And then eventually, like right after I said that, I kept playing, and like at the very bottom, what they do in the show is like, they'll type in, if you will, the location and the date.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden it was like Phantom Zone, date unknown, time unknown. I was like, they're in the fucking Phantom Zone. Like, let's go. Like, it was really cool to be like, man, I knew where they were the whole time, but I didn't see it coming still. Like, you know what I mean? Being so deep into this shit to still be surprised with shit that I almost should have seen coming. Like that Wiseman and, oh man, who's the other guy who produced it? Wiseman and, oh, I feel bad now. Sorry, other guy. They fucking love DC though. I would like to see any project they'd work on again.
Well, maybe I'll jump on this latest season. I did watch 1 episode from it, and that's where they brought back Razor from Green Lantern, the animated series, and they kind of continued his story. It's where he's got a red ring and the blue ring, and he wears them at the same time at the end of the episode, I think. And we were like, okay, that's all in the same universe then, I guess, or that's their way of like kindly giving that show closure, because I'm never going to get a season 2 of Green Lantern. So that's the 1 episode I did see, but it wasn't enough to get me to jump back on to even more. Did you ever get on Justice League Action?
Not once. No, I don't know why. And I do see it on the HBO just waiting for me. Should I do it?
I didn't know it was on there because I've been looking to stream that somewhere, and it was last time I checked, it wasn't on HBO. It's not even up for purchase on Vudu.
Ooh, maybe I spoke too soon then. I'm sorry. I could have sworn I saw it there once, though. Maybe I'm mistaken.
I caught a couple episodes as it was releasing. When we'd go and visit my parents, they would have recorded episodes of Justice League Action, and I would watch them, and they're like little 15-minute episodes, but it's got Kevin Conroy, and I think maybe even Tim Daly. Mark Hamill returns, but they do all kinds of stuff. Like you were saying, they explored the DC universe in a big, heavy way. And what's his name? The Cosmic Cabbie. I forgot his name, but he has a whole episode in there. And they really go deep into DC lore. So yeah, I would, if you like Justice League and you want to hear the late Kevin Conroy and a bunch of the other Justice League members, they're in that show, Justice League Action, and it is solid. Like it looks like it's drawn for a younger crowd, but I don't know. To me, there's a lot of really cool references to stuff that you and I grew up on. They even have Batman do the Batman animated series rooftop thing with the lightning bolt. All of that stuff is in there, like all these little references.
That's awesome. All right. If I find it, I will not only tell you where I found it, but I will most certainly take a watch.
Yeah,
I think it's
do.
the 15-minute thing that bothered me for some reason.
A lot of people had an issue with that because they were like, hey, what's going on with that? But that seems to be the format now, isn't it? Like all the kids shows are like 15-minute episodes.
That's how I grew up. I was just talking about it with my wife who has to, she was doing something where she wanted to do a lesson plan around an episode of something. It's like, do Hey Arnold. Hey Arnold is not only appropriate for kids, but every single episode is just jam-packed with life lessons, because I've been going through that after we got the Paramount Plus. And those do 15-minute episodes, and like that never bothered me growing up, nor rewatching it now. Am I like, oh, these are too short? In fact, it seems, like you said, quite perfect. Like it started, we're off and running. By the time I fucking know it, we're wrapping shit up. And like I said, I feel good inside. So I should have, I don't know. Maybe at the time I just wasn't about it. I'll have to see.
Well, I'm glad you reminded me that all the Nickelodeon shows seem to be on Paramount Plus, except for like Kenan and Kel. I think that's still on Netflix. But Hey Arnold, man, I had forgotten a little bit about that show, and I'm gonna go back. I have access to Paramount Plus, so I'm gonna definitely check that out after I watch a little bit more Picard, because people are raving about that season 3. They're like, it's finally good. They're like, Star Trek is finally good again.
I was in the tattoo shop, and he had original OG Star Wars on, and obviously, or not Star Wars, Star Trek on, and I was just sitting there like, this is still pretty good. I mean, for what it is, like that one's still, I might rip through that really quick.
Were you a Next Gen guy over the original?
Yeah.
Me too.
I pretty much kept up with my dad throughout the whole thing. Maybe not religiously, but enough to be like, I think honestly that was one of the ones, because I can't remember what time it was on, but it was right past bedtime. I'd be like, but it's Star Trek night. And my dad was like, all right, well, he can stay up for Star Trek night. You know what I mean? So it was one of those ones that, like, maybe it wasn't my absolute favorite to watch growing up, that I didn't appreciate till later. But yeah, Next Gen was pretty good, and I'd watch Picard. I just had to start it over. That's the thing, in my opinion, that's killing a lot of media. Is like now there's too much to start from the beginning. Like I just started Breaking Bad.
Oh yeah, that's a that's a hell of a journey.
I wasn't ready for it, and not until recently was I like, all right, let's do this. Let's finally do it, and I'm happy. But I mean, at the same time, like I was talking about earlier, it's a lot. It's a lot to consume, and like you have to watch that shit and pay attention and really make it worth it. But some of the conversations are just like, there's more that happens, so much meat that happens in a conversation that other things just can't compare with, no matter how much they throw in there.
What's that?
He's
on
good,
Netflix?
that Bryan Cranston. What?
It's still on Netflix, Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
Yeah, I might have to dive back in, because I was almost done with season 1 and I forgot what distracted me. Same with Sopranos. Like I got pretty far into that. Excellent shows that I know are amazing, but yet at night I'll go to sleep to more Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm, my comfort shows.
It's funny because both of those shows I'm doing, and both of them have the same thing that I think stopped me from watching them for the longest time, that are now surprising me, is that I had an expectation. Like I just thought they were, for Sopranos, I thought it was just going to be Goodfellas plus. You know what I mean? Every now and then somebody get whacked and there's deals and what the fucks and all that. And yes, there is that in there, but that's really not the core of the show. The core of the show is about a man who's trying to control the world and can't, and what happens to him when he can't, and the panic attacks and how it faces him not only medically and physically. And there's a lot to it, more than just, hey, how the fuck you doing? Take the cannoli, And the same kind of thing with Breaking Bad, where I just thought the whole time it was going to be like this badass guy just cooking meth all day and slinging it all night, and just like, who will say my fucking name? I'm Heisenberg. It's not the case. It's really not. There is a lot of talking. There's a lot of frightenedness in him, or there's a lot of fear, I should say. There's a lot of things that he has to express and get through. And by the time you're done watching the first season, you're like, they barely made any meth. Like, I thought this was going to be like a Kingpin show, and like he's still not there, and he's still not to that glorious moment in which social media and pop culture all kind of rolled up into like, this is what you should expect out of Breaking Bad. But they pull that taffy a lot. It's a very long process, and it's a very long, drawn out show that does not get you from A to B as fast as I thought it was going to.
That solid foundation, again, keeps coming up for
Yeah.
those. Well, this last bit of news this week is DC related, as DC Comics has advertised their year-long comic book initiative called Dawn of DC on national television with a trailer that aired during All Elite Wrestling Dynamite on TBS. So the trailer showcased the new series and creative teams. It featured superheroes like Superman and Green Arrow. The ad will also be available on HBO Max and will re-air during All Elite Wrestling Rampage on TNT. So the reason I put this on here is it's been a long time since comic book ads for DC have shown up like in movie theaters or even on television. That's something that Dan DiDio was constantly getting harped on, of like back when Arrow was big. It's like, hey, why don't you have Stephen Amell advertise the latest Green Arrow trade paperback? Or why don't you have him put out an Instagram story of, here's the latest issue, it's out this Wednesday. And DiDio was like, look, it'd be great to do all of that, but it costs money, even though it's all in the same company. It's the television division and the comic book division paying one or the other. And that all needs to be budgeted. It'd be nice if they can just, here, can you just put this up on Instagram as part of your contract? But it doesn't work that way. So because of that, they weren't able to do some heavy advertising in the past, and they haven't been since. So this right here marks the first time that I've seen that they put up a trailer on TV. And I watched it. It premiered at MegaCon, actually, here in Orlando. They showcased it. I watched the trailer. I don't think it's going to get any non-readers in. That's what the goal is, right? Because you're trying to get these wrestling fans, which there's a lot of crossover between wrestling and comic book fans, but you're not going to get the non-readers in with this ad. And, I applaud them for trying, but I just don't think that the message is clear as to what Dawn of DC means to the general consumer.
No, I'm looking at it now, and anybody else can go to just DC.com, and it's okay. I mean, I'm not looking at the actual thing that they'll show during the actual, what's it called, trailer. It's just like forging the future, one hero at a time. Dawn of DC starts in January 2023, and am I on board? Yeah. I mean, I'm going to pick up DC books no matter what. That's like you said. That's they've put me in their algorithm. I am already a statistic counted for, and they don't give a shit about me in that sense of the fact of how do I get new. And I don't think I can agree with you more of like nothing here is making me go like, again, trying to put myself in the mind of a non-comic reader of like, oh man, I got to get in on this. Bold new directions for some of DC's biggest characters, such as Batman, Superman, Nightwing, and Harley. This sounds amazing. It's like, no, didn't you guys like try this a few years ago? And then a few years past that, like, it just sounds like more of the same. Why? Why is this different? What's drawing me in? And Action Comics 1051. Again, we're starting Superman #1 out in February from Josh Williamson and artist Jamil Campbell. Clark Kent is setting back into his life on Earth while iconic and new enemies erupt from the shadows to take him on. Sounds like a regular fucking day in Superman's world. You know? Like, but what's different? Why? Why am I grabbing this?
Yeah, by them saying just bold new directions, new characters, I don't know. It doesn't tell you what Dawn of DC is truly about. If they were to, even if they were to lean more on like new #1s, I think that would have been a more effective trailer to get like the Joe Schmo out there like, oh, #1s, because they'll come out for it, and hopefully they'll read it, and hopefully it hooks them. Like that's the writers and artist's job then to get them hooked after #1. I need to see what happens in issue #2. And that's what's going to lead into then the comic shop hopefully does their job decently enough to, hey, let me sub this on you so you don't miss #2 and #3 and #4. We can start pulling these for you. There's a lot of things that have to go right for this trailer to pay off. And it's already starting off as a very generic trailer that doesn't tell anyone anything really, aside from maybe it's a relaunch, I guess, sort of. What does bold new direction mean? What does bright future for DC mean? It doesn't say a whole lot, but again, I'm happy that they were able to pull off a trailer and a TV spot. It just kind of sucks that it wasn't a good one.
Oh, shit. Yeah. Yep. Harsh words, but true. True. Again, once I can't even really imagine. I remember once just being happy as a kid, seeing a trailer or a TV spot commercial for the comic book store on Route 22 growing up, and just like, holy shit, like this is real. Like that's amazing. Other people are gonna know about it now. Like, yeah. So you're right. The idea of it, super duper cool. Let's see how the how they pull it off. Maybe. I mean, it didn't actually drop yet, right? We didn't actually see it, or am I crazy?
Dawn of
Not,
DC
yeah,
itself. It's
yeah.
it's going to come out of this event that they have called Night Terrors, which is like it involves the Sandman and some of like the Dream characters and basically like the darkest portions of the DC universe. And the whole message by the end of it is going to be we're looking at a brighter, more optimistic future. And so they're going to, in throughout this story, stamp out a lot of that darkness in the DC universe and celebrate the bright heroes of the DC universe. So that's what this initiative is.
Gotcha. But the actual thing, it's saying, yeah, no, it did air. It already aired. It's out there. This okay. That's what I got to look up and actually see. Because yeah, I mean, going by the website, probably not too awesome, but damn. I mean, yeah, shit. I'm happy it exists, but like you said, too bad they didn't just knock it out of the park.
I will give one positive here, though, is there are some pretty decent teams still over at DC, and I know they've lost a lot. Like Peter J. Tomasi hasn't done anything with them in a little bit, and Pac Leeson is now a Marvel guy. But I will give a recommendation if you are looking to get into something, and I haven't read the book yet, but I know the track record is for if you've read anything like Deceased or some of those Off-World's Dark Knights of Steel, for example. There's a book coming out. It is out by the time this releases, Titans #1. And this does feature the Teen Titans, I guess, if you watch the show. It's got some different members than what the show had, but this one's got the Titans in a more prominent role in the DC universe. So they're kind of, the whole setup in 5G was that the Titans and some of these other characters were going to basically be the new Justice League. So Nightwing and the Titans were going to be that universe's protectors, while the old Superman, Batman, and all of them were fractured and elsewhere. Batman was arrested at some point. And so Titans is kind of the continuation of that vision a little bit, except they're not tied into a whole 5G initiative. But if you get the chance, if you're a fan of Nightwing, I'm not a fan of Nightwing, and I'm picking it up because the creative team behind it is solid, and I think it'll be a pretty good read. And people that have gotten an advanced copy of it are also saying that it's really good. So Tom Taylor, if you like Tom Taylor's stuff, then I would pick up Titans. And I can't say anything about Cyborg or some of those other titles, but I'm really excited for Titans #1.
Interesting. I am a huge Nightwing guy, so I'll probably pick it up just for that.
Well, there you go. So a little positive, right? A little
yeah, freaking stuff right now, and he's got so fucking much. Holy crap! You're right. I do like this guy. I got to start paying attention to names even more. You know, I've got a steady stream of people I like, but Tom Taylor, fuck yeah.
That was one of those guys that when I worked at the shop and they kept losing people, I'm like, keep Tom Taylor, guys. Like, just keep someone. he's selling books for you.
Yeah, I can just keep scrolling, and it's just he's touched a lot of really cool stuff.
But there you have it. That is our news for this week. Let's jump into the final portion of today's show, the Brokept Block, which is what Nick and I have been up to since you last heard us. So, Nick, what have you been up to, playing, reading, watching? What's been making you broke?
I think I touched a lot on it in the show. Like I am going back through Breaking Bad. Not back through. First time, I should say. I say back through because, you know, it's pretty old. And now I'm telling people, you know, it's one of those things. It's like, this is what I'm watching. Like, you haven't seen it yet? Like, no. And they're like, dude, you need to. I'm like, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing, guys.
Doing it right now.
I'm doing it right now. So yes, you're right. It is what I have to do. That's it. I'm getting tattooed a lot, man. That's really, truly what's making me broke. Shit costs so much money, but I'm at the point where I have a big project that I want to get done from like my hand to my chest and finish all that out. I've been doing little pieces for a long time over a lot of different things, and I'm very ADHD with my tattoos. So I'll start one and then I'll say that shit hurts too much. So I'll move to a different spot. And then they all eventually end up hurting pretty bad. But I just got a little flash tattoo, which has a double entendre meaning. Yes. because like if you pull something off a sheet, it's usually their flash sheet. It's just a little symbol, just kind of in and around the wrist on the other side, close to that Green Lantern, Green Arrow.
Mm.
It's kind of close to my classic Superman. I think to finish off, like I'm working on the inside of my arm too with a Wolverine. Hopefully getting that finished around the 27th, if I'm not mistaken. Then I think I could fit like I really have this idea too to put a Starro on my elbow. I
Okay.
think that'd be fun, but like it would also hurt really bad. So I'm not rushing to finish that one yet. And then I'm also hoping for a little Watchman smiley face.
Oh, nice.
And then to kind of bring it all together, just put a bunch of Kirby crackle all throughout it, so it looks like one big piece. But it's an expensive ass habit.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Which Wolverine are you going with as far as like the suit colors?
Classic, the ones that I grew up on, the ones that I would think. So bright yellow, bright kind of blue.
Okay.
Not the dark brownish kind of deal.
Right. Yeah, there was no wrong answer, but I was just curious. They're all great costumes, honestly, with Wolverine.
I thought about for a while the
X-Force, the black and gray.
No, even the one where he just breaks out of the tube and he's got the fun visor on. I
Weapon X.
Thank you, Jesus. I kept wanting to say X-23, and I'm like, no, that's his kid. Stop. Weapon X, the Weapon X mode. Yeah, and he's just got the sideburns sticking out. Like that was always to me. I remember that episode of X-Men, the animated series. Like that's how I really got into the X-Men and dove into the Chris Claremont universe, really. And just like that's always been a cool episode to me, where he's like hunting a bear or something, and he's got like the predator vision through that goggle, so he can see like thermo. That was always really cool to me. But no, I just went classic one that I kind of remember, and lots of cool contrasting colors. But that's on the inside of my left arm. And like, again, they all fucking suck. I am not a huge fan of getting tattooed at all, despite how many I have. Like, just not, I don't like it. That one sucks more than almost any other one. The ribs still has the top spot. Ooh. Inside arm, I'm over it. Now, I don't have my feet done. I've heard that that's pretty bad too.
Right.
But right now, this has top spot of like, yeah, I really want it done and finished, but like, I don't want it done and finished at the same time.
So you started it. It's got outlines on it, or?
Yep. I'm 2 sessions deep. He thought he can get it done in 2, and I'm sure he could. He's super duper talented. At the other Dale on Instagram, if you want to take a look. Super talented. I'm a bitch though. Like I got into the second session, so the first one was all black, just outline, and then the second session he put in the black shading, inked it, so to speak, and then was even able to start some color. But I was just like, dude, I can't. I'm about to just jump up off. I also have a weird claustrophobia issue. So sometimes, not being strapped down to a table, but I understand the importance of needing not move.
Right.
Psychologically, I know I can't move, and that's enough to make me physically feel uncomfortable, if that makes sense. Like, I'm fucking super duper quirky, if you couldn't tell. And like, I have weird problems with that. So like, that's the other thing where like, he's like, all right, lay down. And I'm like, I don't want to lay down even, we can't do the standing up. And he's like, no, you fucking crazy. Of course I can't do. I need to pin you down and hold your skin down so it does what I need. Like, anyway, I'm hoping he can finish that up and just kind of be done with that inside area, because it's not a good time. Hopefully, one last one. If I could sit and get through it. My biggest thing is like, and anybody out there who wonders, like, what do I need to do to get tattooed? Eat a fat fucking meal and try to sleep as much as you can before you do it. And while you're getting tattooed, if they allow you, keep eating. Just keep sucking on like a lollipop or a lifesaver the whole time. That and breathing is what I'd say the number one things are, just to keep doing. And I don't think I ate enough. I think I got too cocky, because the first session I was like, oh, it's going to hurt really bad. And I got all prepared. And it was bad, but not terrible. You know what I mean? So I thought going into the second one, like, I got this. And I indeed did not have it. So hopefully with a little bit more humility, I'll be ready to go into the third session, bang it out, and keep moving down the arm a little bit.
Well, I can't wait to see it finished. And maybe I missed the picture. Did you post up the Flash one?
No, that just got done on Saturday. It's all red and just kind of
peely.
It's hot. Yeah. It's still quite spicy. So I don't want to give a preconceived notion about what it's going to look like. It's still quite spicy.
All right. Well, I look forward to seeing that, and especially the Wolverine piece, and seeing all the ones the different styles that you get, like the Green Lantern and Green Arrow, like that's an awesome one. The Neil Adams one that you were talking about that you've gotten before. So that's exciting. I can't wait to see them.
Hell yeah, man. I'll show you specifically too. And then once I post, anybody else who wants to come see it can look at that too.
Yeah. The only other recommendation I've got, as far as, we talked about some of the stuff we've been watching, like Picard season 3, but also J-Lo's latest movie, it went straight to Netflix. And I don't know if it had a theatrical run. It might, because she was pushing it pretty hard, but otherwise it's called Mother, and it's basically she's this badass ex-army, whatever you want to call it, all these skills that she has, kind of like Liam Neeson in Taken, but it opens with the movie opens with her needing to give up her child to protect her child because there's people going after her. And then it cuts to years later. She has to protect her now a little bit older child. And will she reconnect? Will she not? So it's heavy on action. So if you like things like John Wick or even Taken, maybe a little bit gorier, I would say, than even those films, then Mother might be right up your alley. Just keep in mind it is, I don't want to say Netflix quality, because Netflix quality can mean several things. They've had great things like House of Cards, and they've had terrible things. So I'd say middle of the road type of, a little bit less production value than John Wick. But if you're just looking for action, just to watch J-Lo kick ass, then I would recommend it just as a Netflix watch. And I'm going to finish it. I like J-Lo. I like supporting Bennifer. I'm a big fan of them. And she even gave Batman a little bit of a bone, because they were asking her during the press junket or whatever, the promotion of who would win between Mother and Ben Affleck's Batman. And she was like, oh, Batman, he's got all kinds of training. Like, they were trying hard to get her to say Mother, and she was still giving it up to Ben. So I'm like, oh, that's sweet. I got to watch this.
It's fucking adorable. One more question for you really quick. Sorry if you covered it. I don't remember hearing though. But speaking of Netflix, production value and middle of the road, did you see the new Power Rangers special?
Oh, I did. And thank you for bringing that up, because I wanted to ask you about it. What did you think?
It was just that. I was pleasantly surprised with how adequately I was satisfied with it. I thought it was going to be like a real bad shit show, and it was just pretty good. It was like an episode of Power Rangers, man. Like, the acting was right there, and some of the jokes were even for me like, all right, stop. But keep going almost. You know what I mean? Like, seeing the two guys who they really focus it around, who's David Yost and Walter Jones, like that's fine. It's glaringly obvious that who didn't sign on. And they still use sound bites for their voice. So you kind of get it a little bit. You kind of get that oomph where you're like, okay, it's kind of like Tommy's there, because like that was the one where you hear Dragon Zord, but you did not hear any like really good yeah, which I thought they really could have like sunk in, like, holy shit, that's Tommy Oliver in there with a good one of those. Whoever they did, if they did grab old Austin St. John voice stock for his, did not sound like Jason at all. But, I am so super nitpicky. I think the thing that, if anything, out of everything, if I was really disappointed with anything, it was the Megazord, that it wasn't a guy in a suit, and that they went for CGI. And I've read and I know, money, time, budget, all that shit played into it, where at the end of the day, apparently it was cheaper to CGI it than to pull this thing out of storage, because there is a suit somewhere still built and capable of housing humans. It could have been possible, but just all in all wasn't there. But I'd watch more. How about that, to answer your question? Like, if they were like, all right, whole season, I'd be like, when? Let's go. I'd watch more.
Yeah, I think I needed to manage my expectations a little bit, because the way they set up Rita, especially in the trailer, when I watched it, I was like, oh man, like she killed a Yellow Ranger. And I thought they were going to go even deeper into some of the lore with the Power Rangers. But yeah, as you were saying, they were really handicapped with the fact that they couldn't use every Ranger. They kind of brought back whoever was willing to sign on. That was Kat, right? From the previous seasons or whatever?
Yeah. Kathleen Sutherland, who joined on. I think it was definitely after the first movie came out. So that must have been like right in between season 2 and 3.
Yeah, where she was evil at first, I think, and then she becomes a Power Ranger.
And can actually transform in and out of a cat. Like, was a white little cat who would go around getting pet by people, and then leads all sorts of implications when you think about that long term. But yeah, it could turn in and out of cat, and got the pink energy, and we learned that too much pink energy could be dangerous.
Right, and also like Aisha, I think, was the other one that returned. There's several that return. But yeah, I could tell just as you were saying, like, all right, well, who's signing on? All right, now what story did we write? Or maybe the story was already written and they're like, okay, well, we can't use Tommy. He didn't want to do it or whatever. So then they had to write around it and give some of the characters like the Blue Ranger a much more prominent role in the film. And you could always, or yeah, I guess it is a film special, whatever. But you could almost tell that could have easily been any of the other older Rangers in his role. I almost felt like it was a bit out of character at times, the way the Blue Ranger was written. I don't know. I just got a little bit of that, but yeah, as you were saying, it could have been an episode. It could have been a whole season if we were to get more. I just, for some reason, expected something a little bit heavier, and that's okay that I didn't get it. It was just my expectations that kind of ruined it a little bit, but I didn't regret watching it at all.
No, and yeah, now that you say it too, maybe that would be the other thing. I would actually give back the Megazord fight for more Karen Ashley and Johnny Young Bosch, the two that you're talking about, former Black and Yellow Ranger, who I thought because of that, spoilers to anybody who hasn't seen it, but they're technically not there. They talk to them via conference. It's a fucking Zoom call, but they're halfway across the galaxy, and at the very end, they're like, "Oh, you settled that? All right, cool. I'm glad that worked out for you guys." But I was really hoping to see them in the same room. Because even though, yes, they all work together, you've never actually seen that. Adam and Zach have never been in the same room, both being Black
true.
Rangers.
Yeah.
Not unmasked anyway. Some people point out, like, in the passing of the power, there was actually both of them. You're right, but by that time, they had already left and they never took their helmets off and stuff like that. I wanted to see, literally, Johnny Young Bosch and Walter Jones unmasked, hanging out, same frame, same building, if you will, like, same set. But again, that was an expectation I built for myself, because he's got that moment. I'm so sorry to Power Ranger geek out at you at the very end, but if you don't mind, he's got that
Please.
moment and in space, right? So Johnny Young Bosch is going to be the Green Ranger. He's the Green Zeo Ranger, and then he becomes the Green Turbo Ranger, and then he hands that over to Carlos, and he's like, "All right, bro, you're going to go be the Turbo Ranger now." And then that guy turns into the Black Space Ranger, right? And at one point, he's like, "I can't fucking do this. I'm not really good at being a Ranger." And out of nowhere, here he comes, Johnny Young Bosch, aka Adam. He's like, "Here, I can help train you." And he does. He transforms in that episode back into the Dino Mastodon. And I just remember, like, holy shit, like, this is crazy. It could have destroyed him, blah, blah, blah. So I was kind of hoping for another moment similar to that, of like, here's these two former Black Rangers. Maybe they both shouldn't be morphed at the same time, or maybe they're tossing the power coin back and forth, going in and out of morph each other. And I don't know. I was expecting more play with them, but that's just a giant nerd hoping.
Well, have you heard of any possibility of another special?
No, people seem to be happy. I mean, for the most part, you're always going to have your people who are butthurt that they didn't, but all in all, I think honestly, the general consensus through the Power Ranger nerds that I keep up with, at least, is like, this wasn't bad. Definitely definitely nothing like they should have burned this and never let it out. Like nothing horrible, but nothing nothing amazing either. Very middle of the road, but that's kind of what fuels the entertainment industry right now. Like, oh, it didn't fail? Fine. You want more? We'll do it then.
That's true. People are like, yeah, I guess they settle for whatever. Yeah, this has been fun, and I'll have something else to ask you about Power Rangers after the end jingle, but thank you so much for being on and talking a lot of Disney, especially, but mainly industry news and kind of the state of what heroes and movies and stuff are right now, because it's kind of an interesting but very bizarre moment that we're in. So I appreciate you coming out and talking about it. Now, please let them know where they can find you if they want to continue the conversation.
I'm so close to getting back into the podcasting game. Like, I can almost taste it. I'm definitely positive of days I get off now, or at least I open and I'm like firm on that, setting up some sort of maybe schedule. What the show will be is not what it once was. So if anybody's like long-term Nick James fan, A, wow, there is one of you. That's amazing. B, you'll know, like, I used to do Buds, Bros, and Superheroes, and that name will stick. The concept might not. Long-winded way of saying, if you're still on Instagram, haven't posted to it in a while, maybe that Flash tattoo will be the first one to go back up. But anyway, I'm trying to get back into that. So Buds, Bros, and Superheroes would be the place to follow if you like that. If not, every now and then on here, I say it every time. I mean it every single fucking time, Daniel. I get that text through the Instagram like, "Hey, Nick, are you up for one of the slots?" And like, damn near close. How soon do I get back to you, my man? I'm like, yeah, I'll do it Monday. You want to do Monday? And like, I'm ready for it. I'm rearing for it. I love reading the notes. So like, I even said when you're like, do you have any ideas about the notes? Any questions? I'm like, to be honest, I really don't know. Like, it seems like I don't really know where it's going to go, but we always just vibe really well. And again, it's in my opinion, the proof is in that pudding. I had a great time as well. I think the conversation was great. If I do say so myself, and I thank you for always hitting me up, and I'm always here to help when you want, dude. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Very much so. Especially recently, one guy had to unfortunately drop the rotation, so everyone gets a little bit extra, one less slot in the rotation, so everyone gets a little bit extra. Like I think that ends up being one extra episode a year to be on. So good to hear that you're enjoying being a part of the rotation, and yeah, you do an awesome job always. So I appreciate it. Thank you. There will be links to everywhere you can find Nick in the description of today's episode. And also, if you head on over to thereasonsimbroke.com, you will find a link to our Discord where you can connect to other hosts and brokettes and the Collector's Corner, especially like Treasure Hunting Sonic just shared his very impressive Sonic the Hedgehog hat collection. And all those hats are not even everything he has. So if you want to see some amazing collections, head on over to our Discord, click on Collector's Corner. But thank you so much for joining us this week. I've been Daniel, joined by Nick, and Brokehead Core. All will be well. So I'll give you another opportunity here to nerd out with Power Rangers, and we didn't talk about what the big thing was in the plot here with the special was the way they got not rid of, but the way they killed off Trini in this special. And anyone not in the know, the actor, actually, you can let them know, the actor was involved in a car accident, right? Many years ago in the 90s. And they had to, she couldn't return, but I don't even know if they wrote her out of the show.
I think it was actually a little bit later than it. If I'm not mistaken, it was 2001.
Was it?
So she was long past the show. Yeah, it wasn't, because I was pretty surprised at that knowledge too. Like, it is still 22 years ago, so it's not anything new, but it was after most of that popularity had waned. And like we were talking about too, there was 3 actors on it. There was the Red, Black, and Yellow Ranger. We're all like, dude, this sucks. I'm dipping out of here. I don't get paid enough. And out of all of them, for obvious reasons, she was the one who returned the least. Like nothing, not even like any sort of appearances. And it was super sad that she died. And I liked that this was commemorated to her. I thought it was a little weird that was like this subplot of the entire movie. The entire thing was based on that, but still not bad. Like you said, it was pretty sweet. It was nice. I'd watch more.
With that, Rita just blew her away, right? In the thing. So that was one of the things where I think if they hadn't written the story of her passing on, the Yellow Ranger continuing in some form, and in this case through her daughter, I don't know. I felt like they handled that really well, because if they had done a little bit less than that, it would have felt a little bit like, okay, well, we needed to find a way to get rid of them. And in this case, it was like, okay, they did find I think a respectful way to pass on the Yellow Ranger continuing in this universe. She can sort of continue in that way through her daughter. And I don't even know if they have plans to use her anymore. And it'd be nice if they did. But yeah, I know you and I were talking about how, were they also going to kill off the Green Ranger because of, what happened as well. And they ended up doing something like, okay, well, they wrote him out just like the rest of the characters. I don't think his death at all affected the production of this movie, because it seemed like they already had the plot written of he gets turned into the little toy or whatever that was. But it was mainly around Trini. And yeah, I was just curious. I wanted to know what you felt of the send off to Trini that they did.
It was just fine. To be dead honest, I was more worried about how they were going to bring back Rita Repulsa. I think we even talked about this last time. Like a deep Power Ranger nerd cut is like Andros, Red Power Ranger from in space. Zordon's there, and he's like, bro, you got to kill me. It's the only way. You just got to destroy my tube, let the energy all out. Sounds filthy, but it's not what I meant. And just like, release this energy. And Andros like, all right, I got you. And he takes his cool little cyclone blade motherfucker, and he just stabs it, a spiral sword or whatever. And there's a Z wave is what we call it in the Power Ranger nerds verse. And the Z wave goes all across all these different dimensions. And at one point, we see Rita Repulsa, and it goes past her. She's just a lady. Same thing for Lord Zed. Goes past him, and now he's just a man. And these two are on the moon I don't know how they're breathing. It doesn't matter because they have atmosphere on the moon in this universe. And they just start dancing and they fuck off, right?
Huh.
So this whole time when I saw this, I was like, how are they going to do this? Like, where did she go? Like, she didn't go anywhere. We saw where she went. And spoilers for anybody who didn't see it. The way they did it is in that Z wave. That's what Billy was looking for. He was like, listen, nothing really just disappears. Energy can't be created or destroyed. Like that Z wave has to be out there. We can find Zordon and bring him back. And it made sense enough, at least to me, like in searching for that Z wave, they found what was the evil that they zapped out of Rita. And that got sucked back into what he was like kind of communicating with, creating a bridge to, if you will, to find Zordon. And that bridge dragged all the evil Rita into our world again, where it infected Alpha 9 or 6 or one of them. And that's how we got Robo Rita. And in my head, that sentence makes complete sense. And I'm like, all right, keep moving. Like, good. Somebody put in the time, thought out something, and that worked for me much better than anything else. I thought they were just going to be like, you can't kill me, baby. Now I'm a robot. Haha. Or just something. Or I really thought, honestly, the Zeo bad guys, the Machine Empire, were going to have something to do with it for a hot minute. But I like what they did.
Yeah, that's some comic book level writing, man. The way that you just, because that's something that they would do like in the Boom Studios run of Power Rangers or something like, and here's this deep lore of like Zed even showed his face in the comics recently without, he's like a Skeletor looking guy. But yeah, it sounds like they really, because I didn't get any of that when I watched it. That's awesome, man. That's great. I love that. I love that explanation because I thought you were going to say, and they just ignored the ending or whatever. They just could move to Rita's back, but that makes a lot of sense, man. And now I like the movie even more.
Agreed. Yeah, no, it really, somebody thought that one through, and I was like, all right, I see you guys working well.